What's up, fam? Welcome back to another episode of the Literary Lounge. I am Fiza, spokesperson of the English Literary Society Namal, and today we are going to talk about some really interesting stuff. Now, I don't mean to rizz up the podcast right at the start, but have you all noticed how the words we use are changing faster than TikTok trends? Just recently, the Cambridge Dictionary dropped some new slangs into its pages, proving that internet brain rot is not just a trend, but it is here to stay. Language evolves fast, right? And so does theatre. Both strip away the old, remix the new, and sometimes keep just what is essential. And that trend leads us perfectly into today's episode, which is about minimalism. Is it a daring literary trend or just erasure dressed as art? That's what we are going to unpack today. And to understand this better, I'm joined by Ms. Roshaan Ali, who has been working at the crossroads of literature and theatre since the past 3 years. She's worked as a patron of the Namal Dramatics Club. During her tenure, she and her team won various accolades across Pakistan. They also started their independent production house called La Waris Production. She has been passionate about literature and theatre ever since she was born and has been teaching it since the past 12 years. Assalamu alaikum, ma'am. How are you doing?
Walaikum salam. I'm well. Thank you so much for calling me on the podcast.
It's truly an honor to have you here, ma'am. We've seen you directing multiple theatrical performances and we've all enjoyed it. And it's really an honor to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And it's been an honor working with Namal for the past few years on all of these projects.
So, ma'am, we'll dive right into the topic. Minimalism is often framed as a less is more trend. Hemingway also captured it in his iceberg theory. He said that only a small fraction of the story is visible on the surface, while the meaning or the deeper meaning lies hidden underneath. So, when a script is too minimal, does it really free imagination as Hemingway envisioned? Or does it just put a lot of burden on the audience or the writers?
I think that's a great question to start off this podcast with. So, I do believe that we have taken minimalism to a bit of a different height, something that is a bit more than needed at the point. For example, I think the term millennial minimalism, millennial gray has become so popular these days, and it's just a bland house with gray everywhere, gray couches, gray carpets, and gray drapes, and gray walls, and everything. That does take away a lot of material. I mean, how do you explore creativity? Like, you do have a blank canvas, but it really like limits you a lot. But when it comes to theater, I believe that, as I believe Coleridge said, that poetry should be a bit difficult so that, you know, it has something to offer. It excites your mind and it makes you work for that point that the poet wants you to reach to. So with theater as well, I believe there is a very fine balance between going all out and keeping it minimal. So it really has a lot to do with the kind of time period you are trying to encapsulate. For example, if you're talking about the Victorian age, you cannot go minimal with the Victorian age. You have to have the poofy dresses and the extravagant costumes and the very like intricate kind of wallpapers and all of that. So it demands to not be minimal. On the other hand, when we come to like something like Waiting for Godot or a modern or postmodern adaptation of Waiting for Godot, you cannot go maximal with that, because the demand of the script is to find why so many things are hidden and what is hidden behind it. So I believe it has a lot to do with what you want the audience to do, what you expect from the audience, and not just about conveying everything to the audience or hiding everything from the audience. It's about the kind of characters you have, the kind of script that you have, and how you want to convey the message that you want to convey. So it's more about that, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. I really like the way you mentioned the Pinteresty version of minimalism.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they've like overhyped it too much, and it
Absolutely.
has become like a trend of, I mean, essentially aesthetic. The word aesthetic has been so overused,
Yeah.
and the word minimal as well. But the problem that I feel is that when you, as a director, when you get a script that is too minimal,
Yeah.
like on paper it is too minimal, but it has to convey the emotions or the emotional depth that is required for the audience to feel. So how do you take it? I mean, is it like liberating that you have a way for yourself and you can be creative with it, or does it put a lot of burden on you as a director when you are doing it?
I think both of the things can simultaneously exist. I mean, I can be burdened and not be able to execute whatever vision I want to because I have so little on the script.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it gives me so much creative freedom that I can, explore it in whatever way I want to, because the writer is not leading me on in a way that restricts me. So, as a director, I do believe that I am free in many ways, but also too much freedom is a bit harmful. Too
Indeed.
much of anything is harmful. So if I have that much freedom, sometimes I might feel directionless. I
Yeah.
don't know where to go, and as a director I literally have to give you direction, and if I can't find that direction in the script, it's going to be a huge challenge. I believe that again, as a director, that's my whole job, to manage how and in what way I can navigate the gaps, but also not or stay true to what the writer is trying to say. So, in such situations, I believe the whole team, whether it's people on the production, whether it's people in costume, whether it's the characters themselves, the actors who are playing the characters, or even the art director or the people who design the set, we take input from them as well. So many perspectives really help in bringing things together. I do believe that whenever we are, practicing a scene, rehearsing scenes, we go over these things again and again. So it's not just about me as a director or the director's creative vision or just staying true to the writer. It's about everyone trying to bring together their vision in what seems the most, or what makes the most sense, or what's the most coherent in that scene, or the according to the whole picture that we want to present.
So when you talk about the actors, I'm really interested by the part that on screen, when we see actors, we see that even a single eyebrow raise can evoke a lot of emotions in the audience, because when you're watching this closely, you really understand all of that. But in theater, you are not just performing for the front row people, you're also performing for the people who are sitting on the back row. So in that case, how difficult it is to, act minimally, or to uh, use those kind of emotions.
So it has been a huge challenge because, again, we are so used to digital media,
Yeah.
and we are so used to seeing people's faces in our faces. So we can
Exactly.
see the subtleties and everything. But absolutely, the people behind, they can't see that. And we have to make sure that we express our emotions or deliver our dialogues in a way that are clear enough so that everyone in the theater can hear you, can see you, and you can evoke that emotion in everyone as well. So, what we would do during the break time, I hope I did not disturb enough people, but I do remember one of my colleagues getting scared because she heard someone screaming. But literally, we had like vocal practices where we had to make the students practice to scream
Oh.
loud enough, because members of our cast would, or the directors, or the kids who were behind them, our executive team, they would
Yeah.
go to different corners of the football ground and they would make that kid stand in the center of the ground, and the kid would have to scream or shout, and they would be like, we can't hear you, louder, louder, so we would practice like that for an hour. That's how we practice for theater, because we know we don't have the advantage of these technologies
Yeah.
that kind of bring that break that barrier actually. So it has a lot of practice, and we study different tactics of theater. We have to know how to translate that on such a wider scale. It takes a lot of energy, and you can do subtle acting on the stage as well, but then you have to make sure that you are positioned on the stage in such a way, the lighting should fall on your face in such a way. So for example, for a very long time, our president, before becoming the president, when they were vice president, they would be on lighting. And they would be the ones who would either be controlling the sound or the spotlight. So the spotlight really helps to enhance a moment, and it tells the audience where to look. So that also enhances or brings out the expression that the actor is trying to deliver, and then the voice. So we really work on these two things, and we sit at the back of the auditorium when we're practicing so that we can see, does it translate or not? Otherwise, we have to guide the actor in such a way. And many of my students who have gone on to act on different channels as well, they do talk about the struggle of either coming back to theater after going on TV or going on TV after doing theater for a long time, because the techniques are extremely different. So you really have to understand the medium that you're using and the audience and the benefits and disadvantages that you have. You have to understand them in order to really give the best performance that you can.
Right. So the screaming part was extremely interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, it really tells you about the effort that
Absolutely.
actors put into their craft, and it's extremely interesting. So I would just like to ask you again, that is minimalist acting now a reaction against the melodramatic and exaggerated style of performances that my generation did not see?
Yeah.
But I mean, before that, obviously, like when you see the old Bollywood films,
Yes.
you can see that those loud voices and those loud kind of reactions.
Yeah.
And you know that famous movie that we have, Ja Simran Ja Ji
Yes,
Love.
exactly.
So that kind of stuff, when we watch it today, we find very comic.
Yes.
Because we have not been conditioned that way. We've not been conditioned to watching that. So do you think minimalism is a reaction against those kind of performances?
I do think that the reaction has a lot to do with it. For example, if we look through the history of English literature, which most of people who are currently studying or have studied literature, they have read the history. You can see that every other age is like a reaction to the previous age. Romanticism and classicism, then you have Victorian age, then you have modernism, then you have postmodernism. So we see trends that are reacting, or maybe people get fed up of certain trends. They reach such extreme heights, like the melodrama that we have seen in old Bollywood movies. Not even old, actually. I was watching a movie that was from 2005 or 2002, I think. It was a Bollywood movie where I remember as a child it being like an amazing script, and I could just think about it. Had feminist undertones. It was talking about toxic patriarchy. It was talking about mental health in like rural India and stuff like that. But then when I watched it like 25 years later, I was like, is this what I used to enjoy? It also caters to the demand of the people. So just like I was talking about millennial gray, that became a trend. Minimalism has become a trend, and we look at the subtleties, and we look at the kind of thing that people want to see. So we're really catering to the audience, what sells, what has a market value. Melodrama only has a market value in comedy. We use those tactics in comedy. When we want to sell something funny, we use those exaggerations, that hyperbole, to kind of evoke that humor.
Right.
So I think it has to do with the demand and supply kind of system, the ecosystem, the audience, the demand of the audience, and yes, a reaction to that melodrama that saw its peak, and now it's
Indeed.
seeing its fall. Yeah.
Indeed. So we've talked quite a lot about theater and about acting. Now I would like to ask a question specifically about literature, because you have a literary background as well. So when we are, reading a book or a novel in which we see characters that are minimal, because usually books are quite character centric. So, doesn't it make that the characters feel flat because of minimalism, because you do not see a lot of traits in their personalities, and you don't know how you cannot relate to them, to be very specific, because you really relate to the characters that are a little dynamic or that have a lot to offer. So doesn't minimalism make those characters very flat, and it kind of takes away from the charm of the characters?
I do believe that, and I actually feel sad about that as well, because I have been reading a lot of contemporary literature recently.
Yes.
I just came back to contemporary literature after like reading a lot of, as you mentioned, the kind of characters that make you relate to that character. And I think that that was what attracted me to literature in the first place. Feeling like if they're going through an existential crisis, I can relate to that as well. And it would add to my personality. I feel like I would grow as a character as well. Like all the world's a stage and we're all actors. I would feel like an actor on the stage of the world and I could feel my personal growth. But the postmodern contemporary kind of characters, since they are not catering most of the times to a literary audience,
Yeah.
as you know, in the past, in history, contemporary characters, they're very different from that. The past characters offered catharsis. The past characters, they offered so much social commentary. And now the thing is that there's so much going on in the world.
Indeed.
You can't encapsulate all of that. We are all, as human beings, such complex characters. We're worried about the politics. We're also worried about our personal lives. We're also worried about our trauma. We're like, it's psychoanalysis, it's sociological analysis, it's physiological issues. So while we live in such complex times, it is really sad to see that in terms of pop fiction, or in order to become a marketable book to what we call mango people, Aam Aadmi, in order to cater to those people, yes, many writers are watering down their characters and even their plots up to some extent. So one trend that I have seen is that they add a, like, I'm going to use an Urdu word, tadka of trauma,
Yes.
a sprinkle, a dash of trauma, and you know, maybe they're going to add maybe the death of a closed one, cherry on top, and that's the complexity of it.
Yeah.
And what happens is that it simplifies, or even it dilutes the intensity of trauma as well. Or on the other hand, there's this recent book, a lot of kids are reading it these days. It's A Little Life.
Yeah.
It over intensifies the whole stream of consciousness. So it's like we've lost that balance up to a great extent. There are good books out there, but there's such a mass production. It's a whole like market out there. The volume of things that are being produced, it's making things so forgettable. So I do agree with you that the characters are becoming flatter and you can't find that much niche or nuance in them anymore.
Yes, and I think this might not be a little related to a topic, but I think that it is an extremely important subject these days, that people are just writing for the sake of getting their books published.
Yes.
And in that process, they are not really, getting to the essence of writing, or
Yeah.
even they do not know their stories. They just begin writing them, and then there are
Yeah.
like multiple loopholes in the stories. And the book you mentioned, The Little Life, it's just a lot of trauma put into one book without any specific reason.
Yeah.
And like to propagate some propaganda, obviously,
Yeah.
to do that, just to make people feel sympathetic with that
Yeah.
character. And these days it's very common that in books, the main characters are just given a traumatic past or a
Yeah.
traumatic childhood to justify the wrongdoings
Yeah.
of their present or future. So it's extremely odd
Disappointing
and
as well.
disappointing as
Yeah.
well. And that is what is like taking away from the contemporary literature. I mean, there are a lot of good writers out there who are writing a lot of good stuff, but then the kind of public acclaim that these books receive, or the popular fiction receives,
Yes.
they don't
It takes
get
away
that.
from that spotlight that they deserve. So what another problem that happens is that if you read those books that are not getting enough attention, or you think that have those literary qualities, those books turn you into a snob. You become that literary snob. And maybe someone like me, who is somewhat of a people pleaser, doesn't want to be called a snob. So in order to balance, it's human nature that we do want to go with the flow and go with the trends. I do
Yes.
read really bad books and I'm just like, why are so many people reading these books? I am that kind of person who does not enjoy DNFing or did not finish a
Yeah,
book.
yeah.
But I have been compelled. I did not finish A Little Life. I halfway, or I pushed myself to 80%, and I was like, I am done. This is not the kind of, I read the rest of the stuff, the summary online. And
Right.
that's what's taking away from the literary qualities of literature. as a student, when I was a student, when my class fellows were a student, apart from the people who study English, ke Angrezi aa jayegi hame, apart from those people, please know that the language English is different from studying English as a subject. That's a completely different thing. But we came into literature because books were so fascinating.
Indeed.
We wanted to learn about the depths and the crevices and the heights and the lows of literature, and maybe even the language, the nuances of language and everything. But now, I mean, you can't find those qualities in the kind of books that are being produced now. So it's so popular fiction centric that, you know, when everything becomes popular fiction, then what is popular fiction? It's kind of taking away the beauty of literature as well.
Indeed. And but the book you just mentioned, A Little Life, it's a brick of a book. I mean, it's so long.
Yes, it's about 800 pages, I believe. And I'm like,
really long.
the amount of time you have to put into that book, and then you finish that book, so there's a sense of accomplishment, which I said, like, I don't like DNFing or not finishing books.
Yeah.
Finishing an 800 page book should feel like an accomplishment.
Indeed.
But then you're like, okay, I finished 800 pages, but what did I get?
Yeah.
And another thing that's happening is that when I finish books, I can't remember them. I remember of them. Oh, I read this book and it was roughly this and this and this. I can't remember, like, you know, a book stays with you. That's the problem with contemporary work, the kind of flat characters. I forget the names of characters. On the other hand, when you read like books like, for example, I cannot forget The Reluctant Fundamentalist. It was one of the kind of books that I read when it was not as popular at that time, and I could relate to that diaspora and everything. So those things stuck with me, and it became my whole personality for like a whole semester. So that's not the kind of things that you find. Colleen Hoover, I have a huge issue with Colleen Hoover.
Say,
I mean, don't we have enough problematic people in the world already? We do not need to be, you know,
glamorizing toxicity.
Absolutely. So I do have a bone to pick, a bone of contention. These books, absolutely, yeah.
And then when I compare, just as you mentioned that A Little Life is 700 pages long, when I compare it with something like Crime and Punishment, which is also 700 to 800 pages long.
But Crime and Punishment, it does not leave you. Dostoevsky does not leave you. Chekhov does not leave you. They stay with you.
The character is so complex that you just keep on exploring about, you know,
the human condition.
Yeah.
The human condition, the way that it evokes that, like, even I recently went to visit a family member, my chachu, he loves literature as well. We talked about Dostoevsky for like half an hour because he is like from the generation before us. He's a boomer technically, and I'm a millennial, but we could still talk about it because the human condition remains the same.
Exactly.
I mean, when writers talk about the complexity of human nature and thought, and for example, if we're talking about A Little Life in the Stream of Consciousness, why can we still not forget Virginia Woolf? She also talks about a stream of consciousness, Mrs. Dalloway, or To the Lighthouse. When you read these kind of books, you understand, or even James Joyce, these kind of streams of consciousness really bring you into the psyche, and that adds layers of complexity as well. Or in a third person narrative, you can see what Dostoevsky does, what Chekhov do. So these kind of writers are people who stick with you, the kind of texts that stay with you, and they add to your life, and they add to your personality, and they help you understand the world better. I mean, it's very popular that they say literature padh ke bigad gayi hai, but it's not just that. It's that you become so attuned to the world around you, the society around you. Literature opens your eyes to the world, and I believe that good literature should do that. And unfortunately, contemporary literature, I mean, you already know a lot of things through social media. So what is literature offering that's not already on social media?
Yes.
So that's a problem that we're facing in current literature.
And there's one more thing that I want to mention. I'm not really sure of if this thought is correct or not, but I'd like to hear your opinion about it. That when the classical novels were being written, or when we talk about Dostoevsky, specifically, so we see that he very well, you know, characterizes, or his characters are very well, but they also give you the room to be creative and to think of it, which brings us to a topic, minimalism, that you can make your own judgment, or you can observe them the way you want to. But the books that are published nowadays, firstly, they don't have the content that, the kind of content that you can observe.
Absolutely.
It's just, everything is just so in your face.
Yeah.
So it's like,
It's like, so coming back to the point of minimalism, especially when what we talked about in the start, when we were talking about, finding that balance between what you should leave to the audience and
Yeah.
what you should be presenting. The same goes for literature. Some things should be left to the imagination. For example, someone adds such a dialogue that makes the reader think, but the writer doesn't explain that dialogue. He maybe hides it in a hyperbole or a
Yeah.
metaphor, some sort of literary device. Now, what you see is the blatant over explanation of things, which again is diluting the whole purpose of literature. It's dumbing it down
Right.
for people who, literature probably isn't for everyone.
Yeah.
Let's just confess it. And people are, going on Goodreads and reading 60 books a year just to kind of commodify it, or kind of, wear it as a badge, or kind of turn that into a commodity as well, or something
yeah.
like that. And that was never supposed to be the purpose of literature, but it's kind of reflective of the postmodern condition of man as well. I believe that we need to make literature great again. I think we need to do that, but it's high time that we bring back the kind of literature that it doesn't need to be minimal in, waiting for Godot kind of way. It can still be a fine line, treading that fine line between maximal and minimal. Don't over explain, don't under explain. Leave just enough, like crumbs, for the reader to follow. And when they reach the end, their brain has taken them to a place where they're like, oh wow, what was that? And not turning it into like a textbook where you have to clear the concept the way that the writer wants you to understand.
Exactly.
Writers are also so afraid of being misunderstood because the woke culture has made them fear for their rosy roti. So that's
Exactly.
also a problem. So they're just looking out for, their livelihood. So that's also, again, commodification and late capitalism.
And I think we've talked so much about English literature, so I think it'll be good to mention a book of Urdu literature that I read in the recent past. It was Chota Ghar Bade, Chote Shahar Bade Log,
Right.
by Bano Kutsia, and it was like a collection of plays. And in that, when I saw her like writing style, the way she wrote, the plays were like, they gave you the whole concept of the character or the plot, but they also allowed you to fill in the gaps.
Yes.
So it just feels an accomplishment as a reader too, that okay, this is how I think it.
Yeah.
And you're allowing me to think like that and interpret this.
Exactly. I mean, even if you want to talk about good popular fiction, I mean, I'm using the term good very loosely, but if we talk about the Harry Potter books, which are a staple in popular fiction and pop culture right now. When I was reading Harry Potter, or many people of color were reading Harry Potter, the description of Hermione was that she was a person of color because of the way her hair was, her kind of reactions. It did seem like she was a person of color. But when they started making the movies, all the characters were almost white. And apart from like Cho Chang, the token Asian, or Seamus Finnegan, the token Irish character. So when the play came out, The Cursed Child, they cast someone who was black as Hermione's character, and people created a fuss about it. But the thing is that the description of Hermione does not explicitly say anywhere whether she's black or white. It's just that she has really curly hair, which is a signature feature among black people. White people don't have curly hair that much. So if they cast someone and she fits the rest of, like, she's witty, she's smart, they're not looking at that. That's what you do when you read a book. You come up with the character on your own. And for example, when you think about Ron, uski naak patli hai. But when you look at Ron, you can't have a perfect cast, so he has a bit of a thicker. So what about that? It doesn't matter. You should appreciate the journey that the writer takes you on, and how it leaves things open to your mind so that you can fill in the gaps. And I think that is what creates these beautiful images in children's minds. It hones their creativity and their imagination.
Exactly.
And that is extremely important.
Yeah. And especially in today's time and age
Yes.
when we have AI to do everything for us.
Exactly.
It's very important to just exercise ourselves.
We
to
need to
increase.
exercise our brains a bit more where we stopped using it a lot. Yeah.
That is a complete different topic, and I think we'll go.
Yeah,
off
you should
board with
explore
it.
that later. Yeah.
Indeed. So, coming back to theater, when I see the sets, they are very like elaborate
Yeah.
and very well curated sets. But in when following minimalism or the minimalist technique, we
Yeah.
see that the props, there are very few props, or just as Chekhov said, that if there's a rifle on the wall, hanging on the wall in Act 1, then it should go off by Act 3 if it is not there to do anything. So
Yeah.
it is like a principle of necessity. And
Yes.
so in that case, do you think that it is important to follow this principle, or does it bleach it off its cultural roots? Because in our society or in our culture, we see that these kind of costumes or setups are a part of our cultural identity.
I think that's the last point that you raise is a really good point, because when, for example, we did a play here in Namal and we also won an award at NUST for that play. It was called Panchayat.
Right.
When we performed that on the stage, we knew that we were representing a Punjabi gaon. And for that, we needed the charpai and the elaborate clothes and the jewelry and the very flashy makeup. And there was a lot going on in the set. We had to borrow a lot of things from our homes, the pagdi and everything. So again, it was a cultural demand. You
Right.
cannot have a minimalist Punjabi gaon ka ghar.
Yeah.
So in order to keep the cultural elements intact, in order to keep the serving the purpose, everything that serves a purpose in that Punjabi house should be there on set. Whether it's maximal or not, it doesn't matter. You cannot just find one scenery hanging in a Punjabi house. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
Or any gaon ka ghar, you will find a hookah. It's not just cultural appropriation. You will find a hookah in some house. You will find a charpai. You will find like extravagant decor items, because that's how people like to decorate their houses. But on the other hand, if you're adapting a play that is, for example, reflecting a modern aristocratic or elite class person, they might have a minimal house, and that is serving a purpose as well. That, they're trying to cater to a trend
Yeah.
that sets them apart as the elite.
Right.
I mean, if you ever look up at the videos of real estate where there are like houses worth billions in like California or New York, you'll see how bland they are. So if you want to portray a character like that or a scene in some house like that, you can go minimal because it's serving a purpose, as Chekhov says. But if you want to modernize or even post-modernize something that is essentially culturally or socially maximalist, that's going to defeat the purpose. So sometimes you have to go against the grain, no matter what the trend is, whether it's minimal or not. Sometimes you have to make that choice because it serves your purpose.
Yeah, that's a very insightful answer, I must say. That brings us to the end of the podcast. We have looked at minimalism from both sides. Its power to make absence deeply meaningful, and the challenges it poses when simplicity risks turning into emptiness. Thank you very much, ma'am, for taking out your time and for being here. It was really a pleasure listening to you.
Thank you for having me. I had a wonderful time talking about everything and anything under the sun.
I'm glad, ma'am. Thank you very much. It's an absolute honor for us. And thank you very much, guys, for tuning in. See you in the next episode. Until then, Allah Hafiz.